are strong, young Jedi.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan King and welcome to this Blender VFX tutorial where I'm going to show you how to make Force Lightning in Blender. Now I'm not going to be showing you how to do the lightsaber effect in this tutorial because that would just make the tutorial way too long, but if you guys want to learn how I make lightsaber VFX, let me know in the comments, and if I get enough requests for it, then I may make a tutorial on how to do lightsabers in Blender. So my younger brother played as the Jedi, and then I played as the Sith, and then my other younger brother filmed us. And my brother who played the Jedi has a YouTube channel called Copper Star Animation, so there will be a link in the description if you'd like to check out his YouTube channel. He makes grease pencil animations with Blender. He's got some really cool animations. If you're wondering what you should watch first, I suggest watching the stick figure and the art world. That's a pretty awesome short. And he's almost at 100 subscribers, so that'd be really awesome if we could bump him past that first 100 and maybe even get him well on his way to the next 100. And at the end of this tutorial, we're going to be video editing this together in Blender's video editor and making the final thing. So in the final video, I have two different lightning sound effects that I'm going to be using. So these are on freesound.org and they're licensed as Creative Commons 0. So if you want to go ahead and download these, links will be in the description. So I have this really awesome lightning electricity spark sound that I'm going to be using, and I also have this electric shock sound that I'm going to be using. So thank you to these two creators for uploading these onto Freesound, and if you'd like to download the project files for this tutorial and also help to support me, it's going to be available on my Gumroad and Patreon with the links in the description. And when you download it, you're going to get all the tutorial files for this shot right here, and you're also going to get my Lightning default startup Blender file, and you can use that to make your own lightning shots. But of course, if you want to, you can just go ahead and do this tutorial and make your own Lightning default startup file. Now before we jump into Blender, I did want to talk about the best way to film your shot. So my younger brother was just holding my phone and filming us, and you don't really have to have your camera on a tripod. You can if you want to, but you don't really have to because we're just going to be moving the lightning and just keeping it on top of the shot. So if your camera's bumping around a lot, that could mess up the shot and make it harder, but as long as your camera's just moving kind of slowly, then it should work fine and you don't need to worry about having your camera on a tripod. And then also you can see that this original footage is actually a lot brighter. What I did is I actually color corrected it and made it look like it was darker, and I added a little bit more red and blue to kind of give it that blue look, and that way it looks more menacing and maybe somewhere where a Sith would hang out. So if you want to go ahead and do that, I will show you how I color corrected my shot, so if you want to do it, you totally can. And also it makes the lightning look cooler because it's glowing. So if you want to film this in a darker area or just color correct it and make it look dark, that may look cool, but you could totally film this in daylight or a lit scene as well. And then you can see in this other shot right here, the Sith shocks the Jedi kind of from the front. And so the Jedi is actually in front of the lightning. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you want to have an object or a person in front of the lightning, I'm going to show you how to make that work. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to mask out the character or the object or whatever is in front of the lightning. And then we're going to replace it for the original footage. And that way it's going to look like the lightning is going to be behind the object. And that way you can have the lightning behind an object or a person. Alright, so let's go ahead now and make this Force Lightning. Alright, and here we are in Blender, and I have my screencast keys right here so that you can see what buttons I'm pressing. So I'm actually going to go over to the video editor so that we can edit just the part that we want to use for the VFX. So what I'm going to do is scroll over here, and you can see that there's this video editing tab. Now if you don't have this, you can click on plus here, and then go to video editing and then click on video editing. So I actually have some custom settings for my video editing setup. If you don't know how to do video editing in Blender and you'd like to learn how, I have a complete Blender video editing tutorial series on my YouTube channel. There will be a link in the description to that. But I will go over the basic things so that you can follow along. So I have my file browser on a screen next to me, so what I'm going to do is just drag the video that I want to use into Blender's video editor, just like this. And then I can scroll out here, and also this end value right down here, I can bring this out so that we can see what we're doing. Now you can click on this play button here. I also have the space bar set up to play, and you can click play and just play through that. And then you can also grab right here and drag around to look through the video. So just go to the part that you want to use, and then when you're at the part that you want to use, I just want to start it about right here. What I'm going to do is just make sure this blue line is right where you want the video to start. I'm going to move my mouse over to this side, and then I'm going to press K, and K is going to cut the strip, and then these two are selected, so I'm going to press X and that'll delete them. And then I can press the space bar, just play through this and find the ending of it, and I'm just going to go to right here, I'm just gonna leave it like this. So now I'm gonna select this, hold down the shift key, select this, and then press K with my mouse over here. And then I can just press X and delete that. So now we just have the little spot that we want to use. Now I'm going to select this and shift select this and press G, and I can move this over, and then I'll just click with my middle mouse wheel and move back over here. Just move over here and zoom in, and I'm just going to move this to frame 1. So I'm just going to drag this over here, move over to frame 1. You can see there's numbers here, so just move it to frame 1. And then if I play through this, just let it go to the end. And then you can set the end frame to the end here. So I'm just going to move over and find where the end frame is. And then I'm going to move 1 frame back by clicking the back arrow key. And that is the very last frame. So you can see we are on frame 198. So the end here, I need to make this end frame 198. Okay, so now the animation is just complete. It's just a little short animation. That's what we're going to be using. So now what I'm going to do is render these out to images that we can use in Blender. Now you could render this out to a video if you wanted, but I found the images just work a little bit better with Blender. So we're going to be rendering this out as an image sequence and then adding it into the VFX. So let's just scroll down here. And I'm going to go to an output right here. I'm just going to click on this. And what I'm going to do is just make a folder where I want my images to be, and then don't name them anything. Just click on accept. And that way, if they're not named anything, they'll just be named 001, 002, and so on. And then if you scroll down right here, you could have it as PNGs. I'm going to change it to JPEG so that the file size is smaller. And then the quality here, I'm going to turn it to 100. So now let's just go file and save this. And I'm just going to save this in the same folder where I have all my project files as videoediting.blend and just click on save. So now what I can do is I can press Ctrl F12 to render the animation, or go render and render animation. And here it is rendering. And if I just hop over to my file browser, if I go right in here to the photos, you can see that it's rendering these all out to an image sequence. Alright, and it finished. So now I'm going to go file and just open up a new general. Alright, so let's go ahead and actually model the lightning now. So I'm just going to select everything and delete it. And I need to turn on my screencast keys again, right there in the corner so you can see what buttons I'm pressing. I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to add a plane. Just going to zoom in here. I'm going to tab into edit mode and I'm going to press S and then type in 0 and enter. So we've just squashed it down and it's just right in there. Now all those 4 vertices are on top of each other and we want to merge them together so that there's only 1 vertice. So what I'm going to do is press M, and then that's going to bring up this merge, and I'm going to click on by distance. And what that's going to do is merge the vertices together. And you can see that now if I just zoom in here, you can see there's actually 1 little vertice right there. So now I can start modeling the lightning. So I'm just going to press 1 to go to front view, and I'm going to press E to extrude and just extrude this up and start modeling the lightning. So just go up maybe about this far and then extrude it out. And I'm just clicking on these points and then pressing E to extrude and then clicking. So I'm just going to make the lightning, make it look cool. Just do something like that, make that go up, and I'm making sure it's in the 3D space as well so it's not super flat. So just something like this. I think making it pretty big like this is probably good, making it kind of far away. And it won't actually look like this because later on we're going to tell these points to be sucked to one area, and then we can move that around, and then that'll tell it where the lightning is going to go to. Okay, I'm going to go like this, so that's pretty good. Let's save this file. So I'm going to go File and Save. I'm going to save this Blender file in my project files as Lightning Default Startup. And this way, if you want to do Lightning sometime in the future, you can use that same Blender file and everything's going to be set up for you. And then when you want to use it, you can just copy it, put it into wherever you're working on your project, and then go into it and you can use it to make your lightning. So let's just click on Save Blender File right here, and then that way you can just copy it and you won't have to make this all over again. So there we have our lightning, looking pretty cool. I'm going to press Shift C to center the 3D cursor right in there, and then I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to add a plane. I'm going to move this plane up by pressing G and Z, bring this up. I'm going to tab into edit mode now and press R and X and type in 90 and enter. And that way it's kind of going up like this. And then I'm just going to scale this down on the X-axis, just scale it down, and that way we just have this little bit. Basically what this is going to be is the lightning is going to be sucked onto it, and then we can animate this and move it around, and the lightning is going to follow along with it. Okay, so now I have that. Now the lightning is going to be sucked onto it, but I want to make the lightning every now and then. I kind of want to make the lightning glitch around because the lightning sometimes spits off in random directions. So to make this work, I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to press Shift D and duplicate this whole thing over, and then I'll press R and Y and 90, enter, and then I'll just scale it down by pressing S and X, moving it down. And then I want to make this a little bit taller, so I'll press S and Z, bring it up. So now we just have this little plane right here. I'm going to press 7 to go to top view, just move this up, and then just move it kind of far away, something kind of like that. And then I'm going to press Shift D, duplicate this, bring it over here, and then rotate it so that it's facing towards the center. And then I'm going to do that one more time. So Shift D, bring this over here, and then R to rotate, and just place it right in there. So basically we have this thing here. Now this might seem really weird, but what we're going to do is we're going to animate it so that these little pieces go in and out, and they kind of compress and then go bigger. And what that's going to do is it's going to make the lightning every now and then kind of zap over to it and give it more randomness. So now what I want to do is go back into object mode, and I want to actually add shape keys so that I can move the spheres here. So I'm going to go over here to the shape key settings, and I actually want to make these contracted as the default. So I'm going to tab into edit mode here, and then just deselect everything. I'm going to move my mouse over these planes, and I'm going to press L, and that'll select all the linked vertices. So now that we have that all selected, I'm going to scale this way down, just make it really small and kind of move it into the center here. Just like that. Tab back into object mode, and then right over here on the shape keys, if you just click on this little triangle here, you can see there's the shape keys. I'm going to click on the plus here, and that's going to be the basis shape key. So that's kind of the default of this object. Now what I want to do is I want to add another shape key and tell it to be like this. So I'm going to go back into object mode, click on the plus here, and it's going to add key 1. And then with this key 1 selected right here, just select that. I'm going to tab into edit mode, scale this way up to the size that you want. So probably something like that. And then tab back into object mode. And then you can see this value right here on key 1. If I change this, you can see that it's now animating in between the two values, and it's making it bigger and smaller. So we can use this and animate it, and we're going to kind of animate it like kind of like this. And that way, every now and then the lightning is going to kind of flicker. These little bits of lightning are going to flicker onto that and then kind of come back, but they're mostly going to be on this. So I'm just going to turn this value to 0 and then click back on the basis key. Now what I'm going to do is press Shift C to make my 3D cursors in the center there, and I'll press Shift A, and this time I'm going to go to empty, and I'm going to add a plane axis and just leave it down here. What we're going to do is we're going to tell the lightning that this bottom part of the lightning is going to be connected onto here, and this way we can control where the lightning's coming from, and then this will control where the lightning's going. And then I'm going to press Shift A again, and I'm going to go to empty, and this time I'm going to add a circle. I'm going to scale this circle up, bring it up a little bit, and then press R and X and type in 90 and enter. Basically what this is going to be is when we move this, the jitter in the lightning is going to be moved around. So this object is basically going to control the noise of the lightning, and when we move this, the noise is going to change and it's going to act all jittery, so we can animate this. And then one more time I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go to empty, and this time I'm going to add a sphere. I'm going to scale this thing up and just kind of bring it right here so that it's pretty big, pretty much filling up the entire thing. And this is going to be the master control to move the entire lightning. So at the starting of the scene, we're going to move this in and everything's going to move with it. Okay, so let's click on the lightning now. I'm just going to go file and save this again. So what we're going to do is we're going to add modifiers onto this lightning to make it do what we want. But before we do that, I need to actually do some weight painting on this, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the shrink wrap modifier on this, but if I add the shrink wrap modifier so that this is sucked onto here, the entire lightning is going to be sucked on. But I want to tell it that down here it's not going to be sucked on at all, and then as it goes up, it's going to slowly have more and more power so that the end bits here are going to be connected on to this object. So I'm going to click on this, and if I go into weight paint mode, you can see that it's going to be really hard to weight paint it, so we can't really see what we're doing while we're weight painting. So I'm going to go back into object mode. What I'm going to do is tab into edit mode and then press A to select everything. And then I'm going to press E and just bring this out. Just bring it out, just something like that. And then don't deselect this, just leave it like that, because once we finish weight painting, we're actually going to go back and delete these vertices. So now that that is extruded out, I'm going to go right here, go back into weight paint. And now you can see that everything is blue, and that's what we want. So what I'm going to do here, if I just click over here, you can see here is the brushes for the weight paint. As I start to paint this, it's going to go from blue to a lighter blue to green, and then to yellow, and then finally to red. And what the weight paint is going to do is going to tell it that whatever is red is going to be fully sucked onto this object, and then whatever is the dark blue is not going to be affected at all. So I'm just going to start here and start by tapping these corners here. Now if you try to tap the face, it's not really going to work, and that's because the weight painting only works with the different vertices. So just start tapping around here, and I'm just going to add red on all of the top bit. So make sure it's fully red. Just go along here, and I'm going to also tap down here kind of onto the second and maybe even third parts and make this all red, because I want this to be fully attached to the rig controller that we made. So just keep on going. You could even make your brush bigger by pulling up this radius and then just going along here. I'm going to have a lot of this red. So this red, I'm going to make this all red, even this red, and then this red here and up there. Okay, even this is going to be red. Okay, just like that. So that's going to all be red, maybe even go a little bit farther down. Okay, and then I want this to be yellow, and then this to kind of be green and blue, and then this is going to be just the normal blue because I don't want it to be affected at all, so that it stays down here. So to do this, I'm going to take the strength here and turn it way down, and then I'm just going to start tapping. And this I want to be yellow, so just make sure it's kind of a yellowy orangey color. And if you want to undo something, you can press Ctrl Z, of course, to undo it, but you can also change this to subtract and then tap along there and make the colors get colder and colder instead of hotter and hotter. So if it's like too red and you want to go back, you can use that. So I'm just going to keep on tapping. This can't be blue. The only thing that needs to be blue is like down here. So I'm going to make this yellow, and then this is going to be green. And then what I'm going to do is just make the strength really small and actually tap this so that all of this is at least a little bit blue, just like that. Okay, that's a little too much, but we'll erase that. Okay, so there we go. I think I'll make this a little bit stronger too, because that needs to be yellow. Pretty much all this here at least needs to be yellow and up. So just like that. Okay, that looks good. Maybe make this a little bit stronger. Make sure these top bits are all red. Something like that. Okay, so now this bottom part here, I'm going to click on this draw here, change it to subtract, and now I'm just going to make the strength really small. And I'm just going to tap here, and these two bottom vertices, this one and this one, I need that to be fully dark blue. So just tap a bunch of times, make sure it's fully dark blue, because I don't want it to be being pulled up at all. I want it to stay down here. And then these right here, it's a little too bright, so I'm just going to tap. That's actually too much. Let me just change the strength really far down. Just tap a tiny bit, but that looks pretty good. Okay, so there we go. So we have blue, lighter blue, green, yellow, and then red right up here. And I think I'll actually add just a tiny bit more red. So I'm going to click on this, click on the add brush, and then just tap a few more places. And turn the strength way down, and then just tap a few places just to make it a little bit more orangey, because I usually underestimate how much red we need. Maybe right here, just add a tiny bit more yellow. Okay, there we go. And we can go back later and edit this if you want. I'm just going to go back to object mode now. And then remember, tab into edit mode. And we're going to press X and delete vertices. And because we still have those selected, they're still selected. So I'm going to delete vertices. And now we're back to the lightning here, but it's still weight painted. So now let's add on those modifiers to make this look a lot more like lightning. So I'm going to click over to the wrench here, and that's going to go to the modifiers panel. I'm going to click on add modifier, and I'm going to start off with adding the shrink wrap modifier. Now I want to tell it to shrink wrap on to this object. So I'm going to click on this. And I found that the wrap method, it works best at the target normal project. You could change this if you wanted, but I found that this bottom one here works the best. And then this target right here, I'm going to click on this eyedropper and change this to this one. And you can see that now it brings it all over, but it's actually bringing the whole thing over. And so what we want to do is use that weight paint to tell it how much it's going to be pulled. So the vertex group right here, if we click on this, and this group here is the weight painting that we just weight painted. So click on this, and now you can see that most of it goes up here, but the bottom part is still being pulled down here and isn't moving. So that's exactly what we want. And also I want to rename these objects just so that they're easy to find. So this one right here, if I just bring this down, you can see here's the outliner. This top object, I'm going to double click on this to rename it. I'm just going to call it lightning end. So it's the ending of the lightning. I'm going to click on this one, call this master control, or controller maybe, master controller. This plane right here, this is going to be the lightning, so lightning. And then this one right here, that's going to be the noise control. And then this last one right here, this is going to be the lightning start. So the lightning start, that's where the lightning is going to start from. All right, so let's click back on the lightning and add more modifiers. So now what I want to do is I want to add the subsurf modifier. So add modifier subdivision surface, because I want to kind of smooth it out so it has more geometry and detail. And I'm going to turn right here the levels, the viewport and render. I'm going to turn these both up to 4. Let's go file and save this again. And that way it's just going to be very smooth. So now what I want to do is give it some thickness, because obviously it's just vertices here and you're not actually going to be able to see this in the render. So what I'm going to do is click on add modifier and add the skin modifier. And you can see that now it's really fat and it looks really weird. Let's turn on smooth shading, and then I'm going to tab into edit mode here and select all of the lightning. And then I'm going to press Control A and bring my mouse down. And that way we're going to change the size of that lightning. So just make it pretty small. And then what I'm going to do is just press B and box select the top areas and press Control A again and make those even thinner. Maybe even box select more, make those even thinner. Control A, just make those little points up here really small. And then down here, I'm going to box select the bottom area and press Control A and make it a little bit fatter. So when it's closer to the point of where the lightning starts, it's going to be really big. And then as it branches off, it's going to get thinner and thinner. And don't make this too thick, but just a little bit thicker and then a little bit thinner down here. Okay, now this is starting to look like lightning. If I move this around, it's a little bit looking like lightning, but it doesn't have any noise or jitter. So we're going to add the noise and jitter right now. So to do this, I'm going to click on add modifier and we're going to add the displace modifier. And then down here, I'm going to click on new. Now there's a few different settings right here on the coordinates. Right here, I'm going to change this to object. And then if I scroll out here, you can see there's this object. I'm going to click on the eyedropper and I'm going to change it to the noise control that we made. And now if I change this, it's going to change the noise. But we still don't have any noise on it. This direction here, I found that RGB XYZ works best. So I'm going to click on that. And now we need to add a texture so that there can be some noise. And then to add that noise, we're going to need to change the texture here. So I'm going to click over on here or just click down right here, and it's going to go to the texturing panel. Right now it's set to image or movie, but what I'm going to do is click on this and change it to clouds. And now you can see it's starting to look like lightning. On the noise basis right here, I'm going to change this to Voronoi F2 F1. And then on the type here, I'm going to change this to hard. And then on the color here, I'm going to change this to color. And then on the size here, I found that like 4 probably works best. And then the depth here, I'm going to bring this all the way up to 24. And then this nabla, I'm going to change this to 0. So now you can see it's really starting to look like lightning. If I bring this around, that's really looking like lightning. So let me just select this again and go back to the modifiers right here. I can scroll down and I need to change the strength up on the displace modifier. So if I just pull this strength up, you can see that now it's getting a lot stronger. And I'm going to hold down the shift key while I bring that strength up. And that way I can make more sensitive movements. So I don't want it to be too strong because that's really crazy, but I don't want it to be too small. So just find something that looks good. And then also if you scale this, you can see that it gets a lot more noisy, and I like that, but I don't want it to be too noisy, but I also don't want to scale it too big and have it too big. So just scale it to something that you like. Let me just bring this around. You can kind of play around with it, move this around, kind of see what you like. This is a little bit fiddly, so I would just say you're going to have to play around with it and just get it to look good. But I like that. I think that looks pretty good. Now, if for some reason you want to go and edit the weight paint, you can do that, but don't tab into edit mode or go into weight paint right now because I found that it crashes Blender. What you need to do is click on this and bring this down, and that'll close all the modifiers. And then what I'm going to do is click and drag right here. And that way you're not going to see the modifiers, but they're still there. That'll just take it away from the view because I found that that crashes Blender. I'm just going to go file and save this again. Now you can tab into edit mode and it's not going to crash Blender because yeah, I did this a few times and it kept on crashing. So now you could extrude this out and then go back into weight paint, and then you could go ahead and paint this. But I like it how it is. So I'm going to go back into edit mode and then just delete these. And then I can just click and drag down to turn those all on. Okay, so that's looking really good. Let's go file and save this again. So now I want to parent these all together so that when we move this, the whole thing's going to be moved. When we move this, the bottom part's going to be moved. And also when we move this, this thing's going to move along with it. So what I need to do is click on the lightning and then shift click on the empty and press Control P and set parent to object. So now when I click on this and move it, it's going to move where the lightning is going to start. Now you can see that the lightning is a bit off here. So what I'm going to do is click on this and I'm going to tab into edit mode here. and it's not going to crash, but I found that if you extrude a face out, that can totally crash it. So make sure you're not going to extrude a face out when these are on. What I'm going to do is just select this little vertice right here, and I'm going to bring it down a bit and then tab back into edit mode, see how it's looking, bring it over, tab it back into object mode, tab into edit mode, bring it over, and just keep on doing this until it kind of moves to where the starting is. And I don't need it to be exact, but I just want it to be closer. But of course the noise is going to move it around, so you can only get it so close. Okay, that's really close, so I'm totally fine with that. Although when you move it around, it can kind of get messed up, but we will work with that when we're animating it. So now that moves and that looks really good. And then this moves, that looks really good, and then this moves as well. So what I need to do is parent them all to this. So what I'm going to do is select this one, shift select the noise as well, and then shift select the empty. I don't want to select the lightning because the lightning is already parented to this, so if I parent that as well to this, it's going to mess up the first parent. So I'm just going to select all those, and then lastly shift select the master control. Then I'm going to press Control P and set parent to object. Now if I move this, the whole thing's going to move. I can scale it, rotate it, do whatever I want. I can move the noise, I can move the starting, and I can move the ending. So there is the basic lightning controller. So I'm going to go File and save this again. Now let's go ahead and actually set this up for VFX. So I'm going to set up the compositing so that the compositing is all ready, and then I'm also going to add the material onto the object. So first let's go ahead and make the materials. So I'm just going to click on this right here, and I'm going to go right up here, and I'm going to actually be using Eevee because Eevee is really fast and we don't really need anything more than just a bright light. So I'm just going to click on Eevee, and then I'm going to turn all these off. I don't really need all of these, so bloom, ambient occlusion, all those kind of things, I actually don't need them, so I'm just going to turn them off. Let's go down here, and I'm going to click on new to add a new material. You can just call it lightning. I'm going to change this to an emission, and then on the strength here, I'm going to turn this up to like 20. I found that works pretty well. And then I like to make this kind of a bluish, kind of purplish color. You could definitely make it any color you wanted, like if you want the lightning to be red or green or whatever, but I like to use blue because that's pretty classic in Star Wars, and just lightning in general is blue. If you want to use the exact same color that I'm using, you can click over on this hex value, and then I'm going to use 4D 5F FF. So you can just add that in if you want to use the same exact color that I'm using. And you can see when you go into rendered mode, it's white. And that's because this is so bright. If you turn this down, it's going to be like that. And if you turn it up, it's going to be white. Now, I actually want this because basically what's happening is this is so bright that it's super white. But when we add a glare in the compositor, it's actually going to make this color around the lightning. And that's actually realistic because I think real lightning is white and then it has kind of a blue glare around it. So now let's click back up here and go to some other render settings. I'm just going to go down here to the film, and I'm going to turn this to transparent. Why I'm doing that is so that we can render this out as a transparent background and then add the footage behind us. And then also this is going to be rendered because it's just a plane right here. When you render this out, you'll be able to see it. So to make it so you can't see it, I'm going to select it, go over here to the little square. That's going to go to the object properties, and then scroll down here, and there's this visibility. Just click on this and then turn off renders, and that way you can still see it in the viewport, but you're not going to be able to see it in the render. So when you render it, you won't be able to see it, but you can still see it in the viewport. Okay, that's really good. So let's press Shift A now, and I'm going to add a camera. I'm just going to move, I think, to the side here, kind of where I want the camera to be. And the Sith was right here and the Jedi's kind of over here, so I want it kind of be just like that, kind of set it up how it would be in real life. And then with my view where I want the camera to be, I'm going to press Control Alt number pad 0. And now the camera is right where we are. You can press 0 to go in and out of the camera view using the numpad, and then you can press G and just kind of move it around. You can also press G and double tap Z to move it in and out. Okay, so that looks really good. Let's just press F12 and render this out, and you can see this is exactly what we want. So it's white and it just has a tiny bit of blue. So let's scroll over here, and I'm going to go over to the compositing tab. I'm going to click on use nodes, and then also make sure the backdrop is turned on, and this way we'll be able to see the final render behind us. This here, I'm going to also press N and close this because I don't need it. And then I'm also going to be using the Node Wrangler add-on. So if you don't have that enabled, you can scroll over here and go to Edit and go to Preferences. And then once this loads up, right over here on the Add-ons tab, you can search for Node Wrangler and then just check mark that. And that's a really great add-on for using these nodes and previewing the different nodes. So I'll show you how to use that in a moment. So this render layers, I'm just going to select it and pull it out. Let's also move the timeline down. I still want to use the timeline later on, but I'm just going to bring it down just like that. And then this is one of the features of the Node Wrangler. What I can do is I can hold down Control and Shift and click on this render layers, and that's going to add this viewer, and now we can preview behind us what we're going to see. Now I'm going to press V and that'll zoom the background out, and then I'm going to press Alt V and that'll zoom the background in. And then I can hold down Alt and middle click, and that's going to move this around. Now this is an actual image, but because it's transparent, it just looks like one piece, but this is an entire image behind us. So now what I want to do is I want to add in the footage. So I'm going to press Shift A here. I'm going to search for image, just drop this in here, and then I'm going to click on open and add in the image sequence. So just locate to wherever the image sequence is. I'm going to press A to select all the images and then click on open image. And then again, you can just use the video if you want to, that's totally fine. I just prefer to use images because I feel like they work better. Sometimes I found there's a little bit of glitches when I'm using video. I'm going to use the image sequence. You could also just press Shift A, search for movie clip, and then add that in as a movie clip. Either way will work fine. So now you can see that there's this image sequence right here. It's already got the frames, so there's 198 frames. So right here on the end value, I'm going to type in 198, and there we go. Now that's the entire length of the animation. And then the start frame is at 1. That's really good, and the offset is 0. So now what I want to do is I want to mix these two together. So I'm going to press Shift A, search for an alpha over node, just drop this in here, plug these both up so that they're both, the viewer and composite are both plugged up to the alpha over, and this alpha over is going to let us mix these two together. So this image here, I'm going to drag it into the bottom one, and then I actually need to flip these, and nothing's happening. That's because I'm on frame 0. If I just move over to a different frame, now you can see it in the background. I'm going to press V and just make this a little bit smaller, and then hold down Alt and middle click and just bring that up. And here's the entire animation that we're going to be using. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to make a default startup so that you can always use this Blender file when you want to make more lightning. So we're going to finish this off, then I'm going to copy this Blender file and just copy it over so that we can change it. And then that way we'll still have the default lightning setup if you want to use it for other projects. Now, at the beginning of the tutorial, I also talked about how I was going to color correct this to make it look darker and make it look like more evil. So I'm going to press Shift A here, search for an RGB curves, and just drop, that's the wrong one, RGB curves. Drop the RGB curves right in here, right in front of our image. And that way we can edit the colors. Now, if I Control Shift and click on the RGB curves, you can see what it's doing. Not doing anything yet. Let me just bring this out. On the C here, I'm going to drag this down, and that's going to make everything a little bit darker. Now, I'm also going to add another point and drag it a little bit up, and that way it'll be a little less contrasty. Everything is going to be a little bit more dark. And then I want to make, click on the R here, that's going to go to the red value. I want to add a little bit more red, just bump that up a little bit. And then I'm going to click on the B here, and that's going to go to the blue. And then I'm just going to click on this, add a point, and just add quite a bit more blue. Go back to the C here, and I think I want the whole thing to be a little bit darker. And this is totally optional. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm doing this because it'll make it look more evil and kind of Sith-like. And then also the lightning is going to look cooler because it's going to be glowing in the dark scene. So I'm going to do this, but again, totally optional. You don't have to if you don't want to. And then I'm going to Control Shift and click back on the alpha over so you can see the lightning there. So now what I'm going to do is press Shift A here, and I'm going to search for a glare node. Just drop the glare node right in here. And then I am going to change some of these settings. So on the medium here, I'm going to change this to high. And then on the iterations, I'm going to change this to 5. And then the fade here, I'm going to turn this down a little bit so it's not so crazy bright. And then I want to add another glare, so I'm going to press Shift D, drop it right in front of this one. And this one, instead of streaks, instead of those little, bits, kind of those starry kind of things, I'm going to change this to fog glow, and that's just going to generally add a glow around the entire thing. So now what I want to do is I want to add a bigger glare around the entire thing and kind of behind it, and it also look like it's kind of brightening up the background. So what I want to do is I want to click on this alpha over, press Shift D and duplicate it and drop it right over here. And then I want to attach this image to the bottom one. So we're actually just mixing up the same image, but without the glare. Now what I'm going to do is right in here, I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for the blur node. Just drop the blur node right in here, and then if I Control Shift and click on it, you can see what it's doing. So it just looks like the normal lightning. I'm going to click and drag down, and then click away, and I can change this value. So I'm going to change it to something like 200, press enter, and you can see that now it's really hard to see, but it's just basically blurred that, and so now it's just kind of a white blur there. If I Control Shift and click back on this, you're going to see that it's actually mixing these two together. So if I Control Shift and click back on the alpha over, you can see what it's doing. Now this is too strong right now, so what I'm going to do is press Shift A, search for an RGB curves, and drop the RGB curves right in front of the blur, so before the blur. And then if I grab this and make a point, just bring it out, once it finishes compositing, you'll see that it's actually going to be less strong. So you can change that. If you want to make it more strong, you could bring it down and that'll make it even stronger, but I don't like how that looks because that's too strong. So I'm just going to bring it up something like that and just make it less strong. But it does help just to give a little bit more brightness to the object. So that's the basics of it. I do want to add one more thing because, again, as I talked about at the beginning of the tutorial, you may have an object or a character or something in front of the lightning. And so you may want to mask out that thing so that the lightning looks like it's behind it. So to do that, I'm going to click on this, press Shift D and duplicate the alpha over, just drop it in here and then connect it up. So now we have a second alpha over. Now what I'm going to do is press Shift A, add a mask, drop the mask right down here, and we're going to take this mask and use it as the factor. So this factor here is going to tell it where the first image is going to be and where the second image is going to be. And then what I want to do is I want to replace this for the default video. So right after here, after the color correction, I'm going to plug this right down here. So now we actually need to go ahead and make the mask. So just to show you, I'm going to go back to the layout here. Let me just escape out of this, and we might as well do this now. So I'm going to click on the camera here, press 0 to go into the camera, go over to the camera settings, and I want to actually add the image sequence right here so that we can actually see it while we're animating. So I'm going to click on background images, open this up, click on add image, and then I'm going to click on open. And if you have a movie clip, you can click on movie clip, but I have an image sequence. So I'm going to click on open and then just go inside that folder, press A to select all the images or the video and click on open image. And now if I play through this, it's going to be synced up with the same one. Now, right now it's a little bit slow, and that's because my frame rate was 60 frames per second. So I'm going to click back over here, scroll down, and on the frame rate here on this little printer icon, the frame rate I'm going to change to 60 frames per second. And now when I play this, it looks like real time. So now what I'm going to do, just to show you what I'm going to do with that mask, is just bring this up kind of like that, just for now. I'm not going to animate it yet. I'm just going to go like that and then just kind of rotate this, maybe scale it up, just something like that. And then I'm going to go back to compositing now, and we need to add in that mask. So I'm going to click on the plus right here on the very side. I'm going to go to VFX and I'm going to go to masking. And here we are in the masking layout. I don't want to have these two things up here and I don't want to have this right here. So I'm going to click, drag over, and then let go on that corner there, and that'll close that. And then I want to close this timeline here, so I'm going to move my mouse right up here, and then click, drag up, and then let go. And then this also right here, I'm going to press T to close that. And then there is a panel right here, I'm going to press N to close that. All right, gotten rid of all that stuff. Let me just pull this up here. Okay, I'm going to click on open here to open in the image sequence. And one more time, just go to the photos, press A to select everything, and then click on open clip. So it added these both in again. I'm going to press N and T to close that. Now what I'm going to do is right here, you can click on new to add a new mask. And I'm going to hold down Control and start clicking around the Jedi or my brother and just add that mask around him. And then where that is, that way the lightning won't affect that. So I'm just going to Control and click, just go over here just to show you what I mean. I'll just do this. Doesn't need to be super perfect. So just go like that. Okay, there we go. Just bring it up right there, and that way Blender will automatically fill that. So you can see that now that I've done this, it's added a keyframe here because it has that little yellow line there. It's really small, but hopefully you can see it. Then if I move like a few frames forward, I would suggest not animating every single frame. I would suggest moving a few frames forward, and you can see that now it's changed. So I'm just like box selecting some areas with B, and just selecting these and moving them. Now, just to show you guys, I hopped into my last shot in the little video that I showed at the beginning, and you can see here is the mask that I made. So here is the mask, here is the mask. This is what it looks like. If I Control Shift and click on this, let me just render this out just to show you. So you can see here's the lightning, and then when it composites, there is the character, the Jedi. So as I play through this, you can see that I just manually went through and added all these keyframes. It did take a little while, it was kind of boring, but if you just want to throw on a podcast or some music, or maybe throw on an audiobook, and just go ahead and get through it. So let me just go back to the other file now. So now that we have this, I'm going to go back over to the compositing tab. And right here, I'm going to click on the mask here and add in the mask that we just added. Now, if I press F12 to render this again, there's the lightning, and once it renders, there we go. So now it looks like the lightning is behind him. Now it's really rough right now, so I'm going to escape out of this. I need to add a blur in here to just slightly blur the mask so it's not so rough. So I'm going to press Shift A here, search for a blur, drop the blur right in here, and then I found that changing these both to like 10 works really well. And then when I do that, it's just going to add a tiny little blur here. If I zoom in, you can see that now it blends a lot better and it looks a lot more realistic. And once we go ahead and animate this, I'll show you how I animated it. But for now, this is going to be the default layout. So I'm going to click on File and save this again. And then what I want to do is close this. And then I'm going to hop over to my file browser, and you can see here is all the different files. So here is my Lightning default startup. So what I'm going to do here is click on this and copy it, and then go here and paste it. And then what I'm going to call this is like Lightning tutorial. So there's our Lightning tutorial. Now I'm going to hop in this, and I can actually go ahead and animate it. So let's go back over to the layout here. So I'm going to click on this, just scale it down, kind of bring it over here. I'm actually going to bring it up here out of the shot. And then what I'm going to do is move along and find the spot where I want the lightning to start. So I want the lightning to start coming out of my hand right about there. So what I'm going to do is click on this here. That's going to turn on the auto key, press G and then click, and that'll just place a keyframe right there. And you can see that on the timeline, it's also added a little yellow diamond, and that means that we've added a keyframe. So now what I'm going to do is just click with my arrow key, move one frame over, and then I'm going to press G and move this down and just move it into the position that I want. So just something like that, and we'll scale this down later. So you can see I'm just going to set that right there. And now if I move back and forth with my arrow keys, it's just dropped it right in there. So now what I can do is I can go along here and find the spot where I want the lightning to be fully gone. So he's going to come down, the lightning is going to disappear about here. So I'm just going to press G and then click and just leave it right where it is. And you can see that it's added this orange line here. And that means that there's a keyframe from here to here, but it's not doing anything. It's not moving or anything. Now I'm going to move one frame over and press G and move this back up and then click right there. So now the lightning comes in, and then once it's done, the lightning goes out. So I'm just going to leave that master control where it is, and I'm going to animate the other parts. So I'm first going to animate where the lightning is going to come out from. So what I'm going to do is just click and drop it right there, and it's added a keyframe, and then I'm going to move along, and every few frames I'm going to change it. So I'm going to keep moving along and make it so that the lightning looks like it's coming out of my hand. So just keep on moving this, moving the lightning. You can see it sometimes is offsetted like that. I found that, yeah, sometimes it does that. It really depends on the noise that you have, because the noise is all randomly different. So just move it along and get it pretty close. You could also scale this down if you wanted to. And then you can see that right here, I'm kind of letting go of the lightning. So what I'm going to do now is, for a little while, from here to here, I'm going to have the lightning move over because it's coming out of my hand and going all the way over to the lightsaber. And then I'm going to follow along on the lightsaber as the lightning slowly starts to go away. And then I want the lightning, there we go. So it goes away right there. So I'll just track that on there. So now if I play this, just make sure it looks pretty good. And you can add more keyframes if you need to. Let me just zoom in here and see how it's looking. Okay, I want to add another keyframe and pull it back a little bit. And then just see if you like that speed of the lightning coming over. Okay, that's good. So there's the first one. Now I'm going to animate where the lightning's going from, or where it's going to. So I'm going to scale this down, bring it over, and I'm at the very starting here. Just bring this down like this. And also I'm going to select this lightning and scale it down because right now it's way too big. So just bring it over. You can rotate this or whatever, just like that, okay? Now I'm going to move over, and when he shoots, it's going to kind of go onto the lightsaber. So I'm going to move this up like this. And then actually what I'm going to do is make sure it's pointed up, and then I'm going to press S and Z and make this a lot taller. Now why I'm doing that is because I want it to connect onto the lightsaber and kind of flicker around the lightsaber. Now if you have like a character or a hand or something, you can just scale it to whatever you want. I'm just going to do like that. And then also by the time it gets here, this would be a lot thicker. So I'm going to scale this up. And then also you can rotate this, and that'll kind of change the noise. And you can also rotate this. And then also this here, we'll be animating this later. Okay, so just like that, maybe scale this up a little bit more. Now I'm just going to track this on the lightsaber. So just keep on moving, just go along here. Every few frames kind of move it so that it's still staying right on the lightsaber. Also, something I forgot to mention is if you want to select the camera, click over here and go to the background images. You can change the opacity up to 1, and that way it's going to be a lot easier to see that. I totally forgot about that, but There we go. So now just play through this, see what you think of it. Now it looks pretty boring right now. It just kind of sits there. And this is why I'm going to be using this here, the key here. And you can see if I turn this up, it just adds little glitchy stuff there. So I'm going to be animating that soon. And then also I need to animate this because right now it just kind of chills there. A lot of the lightning doesn't really move. So right when it comes in, I'm going to click on the noise thing here, move it up, and then click. And then I'm going to go to the very end when it goes away, something like that. And then let me just move it back here, go all the way down, just something like that, and then click. So now if I go in between, you can see it's adding lots of noise. Now, when I animate this, you can see it starts to speed up and then kind of slows down at the end. I want it to be consistently moving. So what I'm going to do is with this selected, and you can press A and make sure these keyframes are selected, I'm going to press V and then click on vector. And that way, when this moves, you can see that it's just moving all the way through and it's not slowing down or speeding up. Now it's a little bit slow right now, so I'm going to click right over here so that this is just placed right here. And what I'm going to do is actually move this even farther down, and that'll replace the keyframe. And now if I play through this, it's going to be faster, and you can see it just like that. Now when you play this, it doesn't quite look like it's going onto my hand. What I'm going to do is click on this lightning right here, and I'm just going to kind of move it around so that it looks like it's still coming out of my hand. So I'm just going to keep adding keyframes here, just kind of move it so that it kind of looks like it's more staying with my hand. Now you can also see that it's just kind of going around here and it's not really going up and down on the lightsaber. So I'm just going to select this object. I'm going to click over here on the shape keys. You can see if I just start to turn this up, you can see that now it's really going around the sword. So that looks way better. What I'm going to do is just move this out to something like that, and then I'm going to press I to add a keyframe. Now I don't want to manually animate this because that would kind of take a while and it wouldn't be super random. So I'm actually going to, in the graph editor, add a noise modifier to it to make it so it kind of randomly gets bigger and smaller. Click right here and make sure the crosshair is right there, drag out, and that'll make a new window. And I'm going to click on this and change it to the graph editor. Now deselect everything and just click on this key and just click on this key value 1. You can see there's the keyframe that we added, and that is this keyframe right here. So what I'm going to do is press N, and that'll bring up this panel right here. And you can see that we have some modifiers. So if I click on add modifier, you can add the noise modifier. Now if I play this, you can see, and that looks really good, and it makes it a lot more random. So you could just keep this how it is. It actually doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty cool, but I want to make it get even bigger so that it kind of like randomly, like little bits of lightning kind of shoot around. Let's play around with these values. So if I just bring this out, maybe bring this in so I can see it a little bit better. Okay, so there's the scale. If I change this, it's going to change the scale of it, so it's a lot slower now. So I want it to be pretty fast, but not too fast. Okay, and then also the strength here, definitely want to turn this up, so that some areas, sometimes it gets really big and sometimes it gets really small. So something like that. Maybe turn the scale up a little bit more and the strength a little bit down. That's looking good. Now I don't want it to be flickering the entire time because I don't want it to start flickering till maybe here. So I'm going to add another modifier, and I'm going to add the limits modifier. And this way I can limit the first one, which is the noise. So first thing I'm going to do is limit X. And if I limit X, then I can limit where it's going to start. So if I just keep on moving this, I'm just going to make it so it doesn't start till about here. Now, this may happen to you where the starting is really big and you don't want it to be like that. So what I would suggest doing is changing the offset, because right now I don't want it to start like that. I want it to start really small. So change the offset until that is way down there. And that way it's going to be all closed in. And then I don't want it to be flickering, probably right there. I don't want it to be flickering anymore. So I'm going to click on the maximum X and then turn up this value. And then just kind of find a spot nearby where it goes down. Luckily for me, that one just happens to go down right there, but you may need to move it a little bit farther or a little bit after. So there we go. I'm going to just keep it just like that. So I'm going to click right here, drag over, and then let go. So let's just play through this again, see how it's looking. Really nice. Now, of course, in my final animation, what I did is I actually duplicated this and did the same thing for here. So I would just duplicate this, move it over, delete all the keyframes. So just make sure that's all selected and press double tap A to make sure this is all selected, and then press X and delete keyframes. And then basically you just need to animate it the same exact way. Now for this tutorial, I'm not going to be doing that because I don't want this tutorial to be too long. It's already getting kind of long. So I'm just going to be animating this one hand right here, but in your own time, if you're going to have somebody shooting lightning with both of their hands, you just need to duplicate this and do pretty much the same thing. And if you want to make the lightning look different when you duplicate this, you could tab into edit mode here on the lightning and just change the way this looks, and make it different. So if you want to have less lightning, you could delete some pieces or more lightning, whatever you want to do. So now I'm going to render this out as images, and we're going to add those images back into our video editing Blender file. And then after that, we're going to add some cool flickering effect in Blender's video editor, and then we'll add some sound effects and then render out the final animation. This mask here, I'm not actually going to be using this, so this alpha over here, I'm going to press M, and that'll mute it, and that way it won't be using the mask here because I don't need to cut anyone out of the scene to make the lightning behind them. Let's click over here. I'm going to scroll down here, and I need to save an output for these images. So just click on this, and then right here in the folder with all my other files, I'm going to click plus. I'm going to call this lightning images. And then go inside this folder, click on accept with no name, and that way it'll be 001, 002, and so on. And then the file format here, you could totally do a PNG. I'm going to do JPEG, and then turn the quality up to 100, just so that the file size of the images are a little less. All right, go file and save this again, and then I'm going to press Ctrl F12 to render out the final animation. All right, and the render just finished, so let me just go file and save this again. Now what I'm going to do is go back to my files and open up my video editing file. So I'm back here now. I'm just going to go to the first frame, and I'm going to press Shift A and open up an image sequence. I'm just going to go to the place where I have the lightning images, press A to make sure they're all selected, and then click on Add Image Strip, and you can see that now there is the lightning. Now this raw video right here, I'm going to press this and then click on H, so that way it's hidden. And then this sound here, that's just the sound of the video. I'm just going to leave that in there, and you can see what it's looking like. Now it's actually slightly fast right now, so probably what I would do if I were going to change this is make the noise a little bit less here, that little noise that we added there, so it's not so crazy. But let's go ahead and finish this up now. So I want to add a little bit of flashes, just like the lightning is randomly flashing bigger and there's little flashes to light up the whole scene. So what I'm going to do here is press Shift A, and I'm going to add an adjustment layer. Just pull this adjustment layer out, just click on the two handles and pull it out, and I'm going to bring it out so that right when the lightning is kind of coming out, that's where it starts, and then when the lightning is kind of getting smaller, that's where it stops. So basically just like that. Now what I want to do is with this adjustment layer selected, I'm going to go to the modifiers, and I'm going to click on add modifier, and I'm going to add the brightness and contrast. And then you can see if I turn this up, it's going to make it brighter. What I'm going to do is just press I right here, and that's going to add a keyframe on the brightness value. Now what I want to do is I want to add in another noise in the graph editor to make it randomly get brighter and less bright. So I'm going to click right here with my crosshair right in the corner, drag out, and then I'm going to click on this and go to the graph editor. And then I'm going to click on the brightness in here, the brightness and contrast. Let me just make this smaller. You can see there's the keyframe. I'm going to press N to open up this panel here, go to the modifiers, and I'm going to click on add modifier and add the noise modifier. And then if I play this, you can see what it's doing. Now I need to make the strength a lot bigger. So let me just change the strength and the scale up. Now you can see that you may not really notice anything. If I make the strength really big, you'd probably be able to see it working, and it's not really working. I think this is a bug in Blender, but basically the preview doesn't work very well. So what you need to do is press F12, render out the image, press escape, and now you can see that the lightning is now working. So yeah, it seems to be a bug in Blender. Hopefully it will get fixed. Maybe when you're watching this later on, this won't be a problem. But basically, it won't really update. Sometimes it'll update, but sometimes it won't. So you can see if I make this really strong, okay, now if I make it less strong, it still looks really strong, but if I press F12, escape, it kind of resets it, and now you can see that it's a bit less strong. So I'm going to change the scale here. Let me just change the scale way up. Still really fast. F12, escape, and now it's just kind of slowly pulsing, getting brighter and less bright. So let me just change this down a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. I want to make the scale a little bit smaller. Now also you can see these dips here. It makes it really dark, and I don't really want that. I just want it to get brighter when the lightning comes in. So I'm going to click on add modifier, and once again add a limit right here. Then what I'm going to do is turn on this minimum Y, and when I turn it on, it's going to make this set to 0, so it can never go under 0. So that way it's going to get brighter, but it's not going to get darker. So right here, this is 0, so it will get brighter, but then it'll just stay the default when it's darker. So let's go file and save this again. And now I'm going to add in the sound effects that I talked about at the beginning of the tutorial. You can download them for free with the link in the description. I'm first going to add in this electric shock, so I'm just going to drag and drop it from my file browser. And you won't be able to hear this in the video because I don't have the computer audio turned on, but it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to turn the volume down because it's a little bit strong right now. And this electric shock, I'm just going to put it right at the starting, so right when the lightning comes out, I'm going to have it going. And then I'm going to use this electric sparks, this long one, drop this in here, and I'm just going to kind of cut it down. So I'm going to just select this, press K, and then delete this side. And I'm just going to move it so that it kind of starts at the same time about. And then as it kind of gets smaller, I want the sound to kind of go away. So I'm actually going to animate this and have it fading out. So I'm going to click right here. I'm going to go over here and press I to add a keyframe on the volume. Go over to where there's no lightning. And then I'm going to change this volume to 0 and then press I again. And you can see that now it slowly fades out. You can see there's that little dark area, and that's the lightning fading out. Okay, so I am happy with this animation, so now I'm going to render out the final animation. So right here on the file format, I'm going to change this to FFmpeg video. I'm also going to click right here to set the output. I'm just going to save this in the folder with the other files as final animation and accept that. Okay, let's go down here and do the FFmpeg settings. So right down here, just make sure this is set to FFmpeg video. This is what I like to do. You could do something different if you want to, but these are the settings that I'm going to do. So if you open up the container here, I'm going to set the container to MPEG-4, and then let's open up the audio and video. On the video codec, I'm going to have this H.264 and then leave these as the default of medium quality and good. And then down here on the audio, I'm going to be using the audio codec of MP3. Now, I've actually done some testing with this, and I found that if you use the MP3 audio codec and you're watching the video on an Apple device, like an iPad, an iPhone, or like a Mac computer, you actually can't hear it because for some reason, Apple devices don't support the MP3 audio codec. So if you're going to be watching this video on some sort of Apple device, I would say use the AAC format. But the problem with the AAC format is that when you upload this video to YouTube, the YouTube servers aren't able to finish processing the video because for some reason the YouTube servers don't like the AAC format. So I usually use MP3 because I'm uploading a lot of videos to YouTube, but if I'm going to send my video to someone who has like an iPhone or an iPad, or maybe they're going to watch it on a Mac computer, then I would use AAC. So now I can just go File and save this again, and then you can press Ctrl F12 to render out the final animation, or just go here and go render and render animation. So there we go, there is the final Force Lightning animation. And again, if you'd like to help support me as well as download the project files and get my default Lightning Blender startup file, you can get that with the link in the video description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can definitely leave me a link in the comments to your finished Force Lightning VFX. I'd love to check it out and see what you guys create. But with that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in a future video.